Yeah. So what we're going to talk about is what in tune even means, man. That's what we're going to deal with. We all have a very intuitive sense of what this is. We all know what this is, right? Whether or not you're a musician or not. Yes.
Introduce yourself.
I'm Kaden Hurst. And I do the music good.
Wow.
So that's what I
So good. Great.
So, actually, I meant to ask this before. Does anybody play a musical instrument in here? Banjo counts. Okay, sick bird. Does anybody read music in here? Nice. Yeah, okay.
Does anything sing in the shower?
Does anybody sing in the shower? Yes, awesome. Cool.
How about the car? No,
Cool.
sorry.
So you're all familiar with this. Whether or not you know these little syllables under it or not, you all have heard the major scale. You've all absorbed it just culturally by existing in the world. And because many of you are musicians, you've probably played it on your instrument at some point. Similarly, we all have an idea of what in tune means kind of intuitively, right? We've all heard somebody playing a guitar that's not in tune. It just sounds bad. It just like doesn't, you don't necessarily know why it is, but you know that something in that guitar is clashing with something else in that guitar. All of that is a very intuitive, subjective experience of being in tune. And all that's important. But if we're going to do something like build an instrument that has 230 strings on it, we need something more objective, something more precise than just what things sound like. So that's why we need something else to tell us what in tune means. We need a finer tool to tell us what tuning is. And to answer that question, we've got to touch on a lot of subjects. We've got to touch on... We're going to talk about a lot of stuff. Yeah. I had to do a lot of... Yeah. I had to do a lot of research for this because unlike most questions in music theory, the answer is not because some dead German guys said so. This is a question that has some actual meat behind it. So we're going to start where literally everything starts, which is physics.
Yes.
Specifically, we're going to start with the harmonic series, which is a big, enormous subject that has to do with everything. And I'm going to talk about a very small subject part of that, which is how the harmonic series relates to music. So, say I play this note on the piano, which I'm going to do in a second. Actually, yeah. Let me just say,
Can I?
yeah. Does anybody play piano in here?
Yeah.
I tried to do the thing we didn't do.
One note, you're all good. So when I play this note on the piano, so glad I have a piano in my living room. It's great. What's happening in there? There's a string inside that piano that is vibrating more or less 65 times per second. That's making a pressure wave in the air. That's hitting your eardrum, and your eardrum is also vibrating 65 times a second. That's what hertz means. 1 hertz is once a second. 65 hertz is 65 times a second. So what you're hearing when I play that note on the piano is 65 hertz. But it's not all that you're hearing. So when I played that note on the piano, you primarily heard 65 hertz. That's what you heard the loudest. You also heard 130 hertz. You also heard twice that frequency on top of it. You also heard 195 hertz, so 3 times that initial frequency. So in other words, you heard that low C, you heard that C times 2, and you heard that C times 3. And it doesn't stop there. You heard 4 times that frequency, 5, 6, 7. It's pretty much as high as you want to go. You literally heard every single one of these notes when I played that low C there. Yeah. They're all in there, actually.
Is that right?
So,
layers of it?
what these are called, all of these are multiples of this lower frequency here. All of these are called harmonics. You've ever done that cool like ding thing on a guitar? It's harmonics. This is what you're playing with, is this property here. And all of those frequencies are present in every sound that you hear.
Wait, what's the pink thing on the guitar?
If you take, here's the guitar string, right? That's the note that this string is tuned to, right? But if I cut that string in half, it'll vibrate twice as fast. And we get the next one up, right? So as I move my finger down this guitar string, they get progressively quieter as I go up. But as I keep moving my finger down, I keep getting into higher and higher harmonics of that lower string. But the key point here is, you're hearing all of those pitches when I just pluck it, like that. And the different volumes that these different pitches are at is how we can tell different instruments apart. It's why a piano playing a low C is different from how a bass might sound playing a low C, or a cello might sound playing a low C. And we can really get into the details of that via spectrogram. Say it with me.
Spectrogram!
Yes. Let's go! All right. I'm using this amazing tool called the Chrome Music Lab. Oh, it's not there. I need to move it over there.
So cool.
So cool.
That's so deep.
Whoa, dude. So cool.
While you're getting that sorted
You're
out,
at
I'd
6
just like
minutes.
to
FYI.
propose that
That's true.
from now on, Kaden delivers all speeches. All the speeches were great tonight. I just think personally, if I am to do one, that you should be.
I should do
I'm
it.
just gonna submit my materials to you.
Yeah.
Sweet. Sounds good to me.
Okay.
So, I'm using this amazing tool called the Chrome Music Lab, which is this cool project Google did that gives you a bunch of cool ways to interact with music. This is one of them. This is a handy little spectrogram. So,
What's the bird? What's the bird
I'm
about?
going to play the
I'm sorry.
bird.
Hello.
So,
Sorry.
I'm going to play a couple
the
examples here. And what's going to show up on this screen are a representation of what frequencies are happening and what amplitude they're happening at, so how loud they are. The ones at the lowest end of the screen here are the fundamentals. That means the note that instrument is playing. That C that I played over there was the fundamental. Above that, you are going to see the other notes that you're hearing along with that. And how red they are is how loudly you're hearing them. So we're going to start with this trombone, what it sounds like. This is where we find out if the speaker works. So if you ask the trombonist what instrument, what note they're playing, they would say this one. Because they are. That's the only note they're playing. But everything else you're seeing here is a component of what makes that sound trombone sound. Let's look at something else. Let's look at this flute. It's going to look different. Spoiler alert. Totally different. So different. So, a flute has a much darker tone than a trombone. That's the kind of language we end up using in music, is darker or lighter, or brighter. And what darkness literally means is it has fewer of its overtones are sounding loudly. You can hear less of them. Whereas in a trombone, there's way more going on. If we look at a harp, it's even fewer.
So beautiful.
So, what that means is literally every sound that you hear in the world has these overtones as a component of it. It's just a part of nature that is inescapable.
That's
It
you.
exists. This is me speaking right now. So watch it.
That's so cool.
This is how vibration makes.
There you go. Those are all the
matter.
overtones. So, this is a property that exists in all of music, and it's also the foundation of what in tune means.
Before you go
I'll
on,
play
can
the
you do a
bird.
bird? Can you do a bird?
I'll play the bird.
What?
Fuck.
Why is it so hard?
That's very high frequency.
It's like the Matrix.
They're codes, I tell you. Codes.
I want to click on.
Wait, what's the glass one? Please.
Alright, so the glass is actually kind of cool. Let's look at the glass and then we'll talk about it.
Oh, it's like running your
Yes,
finger
one.
around.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
So pure.
It's
so pure.
So when you rub your finger on the glass, you get something very, very close to a sine wave. What that means is there's very, very little of those overtones present, which is why it sounds so like pure and perfect and mellow. Yeah, so you can literally see how little else is going on, right? Like if we had a more sensitive one, we would see more, and eventually you do see all of it.
Wow, that's so cool.
But the big takeaway here is that is happening always in every sound that you ever hear. And that especially becomes important when you're talking about getting different sounds to sound good together. So, we looked at our spectrogram.
Getting that.
You play this note on an instrument, you hear all of this stuff above it. And we can measure what frequencies all of these notes are at. So, that gives us something that we can use to actually start tuning things in an objective, specific way. Using all of those higher frequencies, all those overtones, all those harmonics of that super low C, we can take this and make it precise. We can go and figure out what all of these beautiful, beautiful ratios are here. One interesting fact about this is that, generally speaking, humans like things that line up well, right? We like geometry, we like things that fit nicely in other things. And the notes that sound good together are ones that have simple ratios that express them. So, we got C over there. I'm going to play a C against this G right here that has a 3-to-2 ratio. Actually, Chris, could you do that? A C and a G? Just a C and a G. Just C and G.
What's
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Cool.
So, that sounds good together. Those agree with each other, right? I want you to play a C and a B above it now. So that's this ratio here.
This pointing technique is amazing.
Oh wait, that's
C.
right.
Can you do a B octave?
Oh yeah. Nope. There we go.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Doesn't sound as good, right?
Tense.
Because the ratio that expresses it is more complicated. There's more going on there. So we tend to like simple things. That's kind of a neat fun fact aside, right? But we can take that information that we got from looking at the harmonics that are present in just a low C and get an objective way to tune all of these notes. And in fact, we can do that with every note in the chromatic scale. So it means all the notes that we have in Western music that we write down. We can use math to figure out all of them.
How did you figure out those ratios, or are they?
Actually, Pythagoras figured out this.
What a question.
People cheering for Pythagoras in our living room.
Yeah.
That's why I didn't miss any.
Okay, no.
Okay.
Yeah.
But there's
Funny you should ask.
common orthographic ratios.
Are there?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, let's talk about that.
5, 4, 3, 4,
Oh,
2,
sweet.
3.
That's cool. Let's talk about that in the Q&A.
Later. Yeah.
So, this tuning system has been around for a very long time. In its simplest form, it's called Pythagorean tuning. But the commonly accepted way that we describe that method of tuning, when we have this whole spectrum of notes, every note on the piano keyboard, is called Just Temperament. Just Temperament means we derived it from that harmonic series, and it's all perfect and natural, and it all lines up. So everything's fine, right?
No.
No, it's not fine. Because I started this whole talk by saying all of your music is out of tune, so it can't be easy to be in tune, right? So there's a problem with Just Temperament. When we look at this chromatic scale, so we got all these notes out of our nice, perfect harmonic series, right? And it's all aligned. When we look a little more closely at that, we find that rather than being nice and even and symmetrical like this, they're all clumpy. Some of those notes are closer together than others. And that's a problem when that's the fundamental unit that you're basing your whole system of writing music on. You run into problems with that. And the way that manifests itself is that, so say we took that piano right there, and we figured out all of the harmonics we needed to tune to. We figured out what frequency every key needed to be tuned to based on that low C, for example. We could do that, and that piano could play perfectly in tune in C. But the more we move away from that key, the less and less in tune it's going to sound. I'm going to try to get you all to hear that with me. So can you mute the speaker? In order to do that, we're going to have to do some close listening. Say it with me.
Close
listening! Yay! so enthusiastic about all this weird math shit that I have for you. Great. Cool. Is it back on? Yeah.
You want it back on?
Right? I want to learn all math like this. Yes.
Can we test it?
Visual aids.
Can you hear that?
Yeah.
Can you turn it on? Cool. So I have a cool little synthy thing on my phone, and I have it set up to be in Just Temperament. And when it's in Just Temperament, it chords like this. Okay, this chord is a perfect major chord. If you listen, no matter how closely you listen to this, all of those notes just fit right in. Yeah, they all line up really nice. Can you turn up a little more?
That's like the phone.
Yeah, so dial tones are just tempered. There you go.
Can we see it?
Nobody has.
Yeah.
Sure, yeah, that's a great idea.
Thank you.
How
Let's
would,
try for that.
yeah, let's try that out.
It's
So,
gonna be an angel like that.
all right,
Check the
so
microphone.
check it out. Oh, thank
We
you.
gotta all be quiet for it.
Yeah. So part of why there's so few overtones there is because this is a sine wave again. So it's back to that thing. So this is a just tempered chord, and it's the chord that is like again like the home for how we tune that system, right? So I'm playing this C chord for you. We're C just temperament. We're in C. Everything's great. If I go to like a related chord, so say I go to like an F chord, things are still pretty good because we're still pretty close to C. That's where we have to do some close listening. So I want you to focus on how things are sounding, and as loud as that can be, it's gonna be easier. Let's go a little bit further afield. So say I go to I want to play an F sharp chord, perfectly fine chord. It's a great chord. To play a B chord. Oh shit, it doesn't work at all. It doesn't work at all. If my piano was tuned like that, there's a bunch of chords that just wouldn't work. They'd be out of tune always. They'd be out of tune inescapably. And I would have no options for how to play that. Some of you might be wondering, well, can't you just retune? Can't you just like adjust everything depending on what key you're playing in? Say you're playing in G, you tune to be in G, and then you're all fine and there's no problems, right? The answer is that you can do that. But like I said earlier, there's 230 strings on a piano. It's gonna take a long time and is deeply, deeply impractical. So we come up with a problem when we're trying to figure out what in tune means, or really just how to play in tune, which is that the best way we know how to do it limits us to playing in only one key. It boxes us in. Fortunately, around 1750 or so, mid-1700s, a solution started to become popular among the music nerds of the day. And that solution was based not around nature and the harmonic series and all of that perfect, elegant Greek stuff. This one was based on compromise. And logarithms, but mostly compromise. And the name for that system is Equal Temperament. So before we had Just Temperament. Just Temperament is based around the harmonic series, and everything's nice and natural and organic. Now we have Equal Temperament, and it's called Equal Temperament because it's able to take this clumpy, troublesome, boxed-in version of the chromatic scale and even it out a little bit. Get all of those little steps between each of these notes to actually be the same. And it does that by swapping out those nice, tidy ratios we had earlier with some scary math. Yeah, and when we take that scary math, we can use it to make a chromatic scale like this, We can make a regular major scale like this. But these scales you can use anywhere. You can take that piano and tune it to equal temperament, like it is. It's out of tune, but it's at one point in its life it was tuned to equal temperament. And you can take that piano and play in any key you'd ever want to. You can play any chord you'd ever want to. You can play any two notes in conjunction with any two notes, and it all works. You don't have those chords like we had earlier that are just grating on you when you hear them. So, more or less, or well, not even more or less, I'm very confident that unless you're really into like Baroque music, all of the music you've ever heard has been in equal temperament. What that means is everything you've ever heard is a little out of tune. Everything. And again, we can hear that. Let's do some more close listening. So, I'm going to fire up that chord again. Oh. So, take this in. This is a just tempered C major chord. Again, it's got that kind of quality to it. Everything just fits exactly where it is. I'm gonna be an eye doctor for a second. I'm gonna go 1, 2 with these two chords. This is the just tempered. I'm gonna switch it over to the equal tempered one. I'm gonna do that back and forth a few times, and I just want you to listen to the distinction between those two. Here's just, and I'm gonna go to equal. I'm gonna keep going. Just make observations. I'm gonna go back and forth. What do we notice?
The equal is almost like softer.
It wobbles.
Yeah, equal wobbles.
Equal wobbles,
Right?
Means I have one more reason never to leave home.
Yeah.
So much fun.
Yeah. So, you can hear it, right? You can hear that in the background of that equal tempered chord, everything's a little wobbly, right? It doesn't quite fit in. It wasn't nearly as bad as the out of tune chords we had in Just Temperament, right? But that's what every major chord sounds like in equal temperament, in the temperament that we're hearing everything with. Everything is a little out of tune. So you could hear that some of those notes just kind of did this back and forth. They all adjusted a little bit. So we've made this grand compromise in our music making as people in the Western world generally, to have everything a little bit out of tune. I'm not here to tell you that everything sucks and that that's bad and everything is bad and good tuning is impossible. I'm here to tell you that everything's a little out of tune, but that's okay. Because tuning isn't the whole thing. And also that equal temperament, while it's got that little catch, well, it's got that fact of it that means that things are never quite purely in tune, it does let us do a whole lot of other stuff.
Oh, snap.
Let's see if they play.
Yes.
You need to.
Oh, I do. I need to switch it over. I should have timed my dramatic speech better. Oh, it's not playing at all. All right, that's cool.
There we go.
There we go.
Okay, muted.
See the tension's building.
Oh.
It's not playing, but that's okay.
You got it.
Right. Yes. Yes. Mm-hmm. Yep. Uh-huh.
I can do that.
So what I'm going to tell you is that
Yep. 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 Yep.
Oh.
what I'm here to
You
Yeah.
can just keep it turned down if you want to.
Oh yeah, that's way
Yeah.
better.
Again.
Whatever. Okay, that'll do something. Yeah. Yeah.
I just want to first start and say that was one of the best presentations I've ever seen.
I've done a lot of speaking in public.
You should
Yeah.
teach
You should-
them
you-
speaking.
yeah, you really should.
Seriously?
Sure. I'll definitely do that. Yeah.
So I just kind of wanted to synthesize. So before you got to this video, I was like,
Yeah.
okay, my first question is, what is jazz?
Yeah.
So what I'm kind of getting at as a synthesis is that because Just Temperament and Equal Temperament is the compromise, that made way for blues and made key modulation possible to make essentially blues and jazz, right? And so that you can.
It's not quite a
play
straight line
around.
through all of those things.
Okay.
So you're right that Equal Temperament made modulation possible. So modulation is a fancy word for changing keys. So yeah, it made us able to go from different keys to one another. It also meant that just chords with a much greater variety of notes in them could be possible. And those things do show up in blues and jazz. But the way that they got that was enabled by that, but that stuff was in blues before blues got put on a piano, before blues got put on an instrument that is fixed pitch like that. So people talk about like blues as how it kind of blurs through different notes, or there are they could call them blue notes, right?
Yeah.
They have some kind of funkiness to them. Those notes, when they're done the real way, aren't even on a piano. They're between the notes that we have right here. There's some. You can't play them on a piano. So they exist because the kind of foundational music for blues and jazz and ragtime and all of that was vocal. It was work songs. And your voice doesn't care. Right? You can sing. So there's what's sometimes called the ambiguous third, or the middle third. It's not a major third. It's not a minor third. It's right between. But you are correct that if our keyboard instruments weren't tuned that way, that wouldn't happen. Wouldn't work. Something else would have happened. I mean, Nina Simone would still be a genius, but it wouldn't sound quite like that.
Yeah. Sorry. I'll ask you. I guess I was gonna go to timbre. I was gonna go into the
Cool. Let's talk about
Just
timbre.
Temperament
Yeah.
and everything. So.
Sweet. Let's wrap back around to it.
Oh, I was just gonna say those little third. What did you say? The between notes, the between the stuff.
A middle third, or like a.
Aren't there those in not Western music?
Yes.
Yeah.
So something that I wanted to make sure I put in as an asterisk in the Q&A is that everything I talked about is only Western European music. That's it. So all of this, still really deep, still a bunch of nuance, but doesn't talk at all about what's going on with traditional Chinese music, doesn't talk at all about Hindustani and Carnatic music, doesn't talk at all about any of those things. Those things have their own tuning systems that are also very, very cool. Go listen to anyone playing on an oud and you'll get tripped out immediately. But yes, all this has to do with Western music. I think that's worth knowing about, because as Western culture kind of does, is like everybody is using that for something, no matter where they are in the world. It's kind of the lingua franca for music a lot of the time. But yeah, there are all kinds of other ways that we tune instruments in other parts of the world. There's also something that I thought about including in this, but I thought it would be a little bit too big, called microtonal music. Yeah. Okay. There you go. It's always people with beards. Yeah, this is very cool. So our octaves usually have 12 steps. That means we took that frequency from one C up to the next C and chopped it into 12 pieces logarithmically. You can chop it up into other numbers of pieces. So people do a lot with 24 notes per octave, so twice as many notes per octave, or 19, 7, they're all weird.
It's terrible.
Yeah, it's crazy. As you might imagine, it's mostly electronic music.
Yeah.
Because you try to build a piano like that, and it's horrible. It's unwieldy. Things exist like that. If you really want to know more about that, I can share you some links.
You could go to Burning Man also.
Or go to one go-to for everybody. If you want to hear microtonal music, there's a guy called Sevish, Sevish, who makes great, like, very danceable electronic music that's all in microtones. So when you start listening to it, just like it's at first it'll sound out of tune, but it's out of tune in the exact same way every time.
I'm curious. My thought kind of relates to non-Western European music. Are there similarity? Like, what's the relationship between Just Temperament and those tuning systems, as well as are there similar compromises that have been made over time globally in different music tuning systems?
I can only speak to some of that because I'm not, as much as I am an admirer of those styles of music, I haven't done nearly as much work. I would need to go into depth in that. But